And what is going on, everybody? Justin Kish here for the Sports Nexus. My name is Justin Kish. Thank you so much for checking out today's video. Today, guys, Jon Jones is in the news today. We're here talking about his latest brushing with the law. UFC 197 is the main event going to be off. So let's get right into this. So Jon Jones, Johnny Bones Jones, has been arrested. Yes, Jon Jones has been arrested. This is, one of many times this guy has been arrested. The talent is there. He's one of the greatest of all time to ever grace the octagon in the UFC. But the last couple of years have not been his best friend. Multiple brush-ins. His most recent brushing came last week. We thought that he's now getting back onto a more positive suit, getting stripped of the light heavyweight title. Cormier, his long nemesis, wins the title. Jon Jones is just more hungry to get his title back and to really, seal the deal on this rivalry between him and Cormier and their upcoming fight at 197. But can all this, go away? Can Jon Jones fight at UFC 197? Now, Jon Jones is currently in prison in New Mexico, or is in jail, I should say. There's a complete difference between prison and jail. He is in jail in New Mexico and only 3 weeks out, from his fight against Daniel Cormier. He's currently being held until there's an official date for a court hearing. It could take a couple of days. It could be taking 10 days. It could take a couple of weeks. We just don't know. There's a lot of, stuff going about this that, we do know bits and pieces of, but the whole story is not officially out when this official date is going to be coming about. His team, I think he's actually represented. I was reading an article earlier today on TMZ. The EAG Sports is what Jon Jones is being represented by. They said they're going to let the legal process play out. We just don't know when he's going to get released. The guy can, try to post bond. He can't post bond. Bond has been taken away because he violated his probation from his hit and run from last year. So Jon Jones is now sitting in a jail in New Mexico until the process plays out. When is he gonna get in front of a judge? Then he can post bail regarding on where it's gonna end up being playing out, because it's gonna be a high sum amount of money for bail. Jon Jones has a track record for multiple issues occurring, like I said, in the last couple of years. But now let's also focus to the UFC 197 card. Is this fight gonna take place? Is the UFC one of the things you guys want to keep an open mind is the UFC gonna suspend Jon Jones? Jon Jones has just been taking, shot after shot, lost his title. He's been suspended by the UFC once. Now that he's in jail, he's going to get suspended again. There is a conduct policy in the UFC, and the UFC, has got to obey this, and maybe Jon Jones will more than likely end up getting suspended for his recent, arrest. I know, his most recent arrest comes with the whole drag racing incident. I think it was last Wednesday or last Friday, Thursday. I just don't know. It's one of those days. It was late last week, going into the whole new week, and Jon Jones was issued 5 citations. One of the biggest ones was for drag racing. The other 4, I don't know at the top of my tongue. I know one had to do with insurance. It was covered up. The police officer could not see it, or whatever the case may be. He spoke about this on the MMA Hour. You guys can go and check that out. Just go search the interview on the MMA Fighting YouTube channel. You guys can find it right there. I think it's one of their latest videos. But, Jon Jones explains everything like that, and then today he officially gave himself up, and now we're talking about the future of the 197. Like I said, the WWE, what am I talking about? We're talking about UFC here. The UFC, like I said, has a conduct policy, and he, regardless of the arrest, you turn yourself in. That's a great thing. You're not, causing a scene. You're not pulling a Mayhem Miller. You're not barricading yourself inside your house or anything like that. You're a man right now. This is where I respect Jon Jones. He did something wrong. He violated his probation. He's not going to run from the police. He's taking this like a man. He's changing right now, and this is, step one. Yes, it's a downward to look at the arrest, but you know what? As long as no one's hurt and everything. I believe that Jon Jones was, drag racing? We just don't know. We didn't see the official footage. We don't see any footage coming out. If he says he didn't, he didn't. We'll just have to. I'm a kind of guy that has to have visual evidence. I'm not going to confirm that he did anything like that. I was not there. I just want to see evidence that if he did it, he did do it. Then he put people's lives in danger. Him himself. But if he didn't, and there's no video, and if he didn't do it, we'll just have to wait and see. We have to see how the whole thing comes out. But we're now, focusing into 197. I gotta get back on that subject here. So 197, it's supposed to be an exciting, night of fights. We got a great card ahead of us on April 23rd. We got the second fight between Cormier and Jones. That's supposed to be headlining the event. And then we have the co-main event of the evening. This is going to be for the flyweight title between Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson and Henry Cejudo, the 2008 Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling. And then we have an excellent lightweight bout between Anthony Showtime Pettis and Edison Barboza. Robert Whitaker is on the card. Andre Fili is on the card. Carla Esparza makes her return, replacing Jessica Aguilar, who's supposed to be facing Juliana Lima in the prelims on Fox Sports 1. It's all, expected to be a great night of fights. But now when you take the potential of John Jones and Daniel Cormier off the card, it now leaves a pretty, an exciting card. Now goes to a card that, is kind of, lackluster, because we're all looking towards this huge fight. I love, all the fights. I respect every single fighter there is in the octagon and MMA in general. But, it's not going to bring in a whole lot of buys. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, he follows me on Twitter. Great guy. I love his, his gaming videos and everything like that. But that's beyond the fact. He does not, bring in, the cash money for the UFC on standalone pay-per-views. He can probably, bring in some great, money here for, a UFC on a Fox, UFC on Fox Sports 1, whatever the case may be. He can defend his titles on there, and that's what he's been mainly doing throughout his entire career. He had all but two of his title fights have been on pay-per-view, and he's only headlined, I think one or two, I want to say, but he's always either been, the co-main event or beyond that. So he has not really, been bringing up, he's not a guy that will sell out arenas. And that's one of the biggest things here. So the UFC, I don't know why I'm trying to say WWE here. The UFC is now trying to rush together. If John Jones is not able to go, we just don't know. Is right now, can you just call it quits on 197? Can you call the pay-per-view quits on UFC 197? Because we don't know when John Jones is getting out of jail. They still have to, get a judge or whatever the whole court thing is. They have to get a judge and, get a court date together. Then he has to post bond. Then he has to go through the whole legal thing. So it's going to take a while. So honestly, I think the UFC, the best thing for them to do is to let John Jones go through the whole legal thing, then get back into it. This is the second time the UFC is going to have to weed on John Jones. John Jones does have a track record for, hurting events. I was listening to Ted Check, a guy who I really do admire in the world of MMA, talking MMA here on YouTube, and in general, his work is very fantastic. Go check out his YouTube channel. John Jones does have a history of hurting events. Look at UFC 151. He was to compete against Dan Henderson. Dana White said that UFC 151 will be remembered as the event that John Jones and Greg Jackson murdered. It was just... Everything was just, John Jones was rejecting to do this, John Jones was rejecting to do that, but, UFC 152, everything turned ahead. Jones defeated Belfort, and, it went on from there, but there was other, run-ins with cards that John Jones, did hurt. But, at the end of the day, John Jones we're now focusing into, current day. Is John Jones going to end up being, the guy who murdered UFC 197? We'll just have to wait and see. There's a lot of ways you can go about this if John Jones is removed from the fight, which I honestly think will be the best thing to do, because, you violated your probation, you had an arrest warrant, you are in jail, and how are you going to end up preparing yourself? You don't know exactly when you're going to get out. Some people say it could take at least 10 days, could take 2 weeks. We just don't know. So, if you can get out tomorrow, then great. Maybe the fight still has a fighting chance. But as it stands right now, there are other ways that the UFC can go about this. Now, when you go in and look at it, Daniel Cormier does have a lot of competition within the light heavyweight division. But when you go in to look at it, he has defeated just about all the top tier guys that has been placed in front of him. Defeated Anthony Johnson back on May 23rd, 2015 to win the vacant light heavyweight championship, won the performance of the night, submitting Anthony Johnson in, I think, the third round of their fight at UFC 187. And then a couple events later at UFC 192, won a very split, very, in-your-face kind of fight that could have gone either way against Alexander Gustafsson at UFC 192. Split decision victory for him. And now you took on, two of the top guys in the light heavyweight division. That leaves guys below the top, below number 2 and number 3. Now that leaves Glover Teixeira, Ryan Bader, Ovin St. Preux. You can automatically, exit Glover Teixeira and Rashad Evans off the list. So that basically leaves Ryan Bader and Ovin St. Preux as the two guys that I honestly think are the right fit to take on Daniel Cormier for the title. I mean, Ryan Bader could possibly be the opportunity for that. Ryan Bader has been itching. Bader has really made a name for himself the last couple of his fights, but his recent run-in against Anthony Johnson did not get the best of him. He lost the fight to Johnson. I think it was, I want to say, a knockout. Was it a knockout? UFC on Fox, Johnson versus Bader back in January. He has not fought ever since, but he does have, the early track record of a nice, victory poll. You look at his, recent track record. He is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's 6-1 in his last 7 fights. He holds a victory run against Rashad Evans, Phil Davis, Ovin St. Preux, Rafael, the guy who just got released by the UFC. I'm not really good with last names, and Anthony Perosh. The top 2 guys on the list from his latest victories, and Rashad Evans and Phil Davis. Those are great, but you know what? We've already seen the fight between Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson. We've seen the fight against him and Gustafsson. Bring in a new face. Bring in a guy who's willing to take that that early jump and just get a title fight. I think Ryan Bader could be the guy that can come in, save the event, and have Cormier versus Bader. And then they just go on with the event. It's going to be too interesting. It's going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be a wrestling match, basically, because both guys are really decorative wrestlers. Bader out of Arizona State. Daniel Cormier, he did his thing. It's going to be an interesting fight. You can go that route. And then Ovin St. Preux, I don't know exactly if he's booked for any fights. I have not seen anything yet from him, but it's been kind of rocky for him in his last couple of fights. I think he's 3-2 in his last 5. But like I said, it's really much leading towards Ryan Bader in my book. If I think that if you're gonna have to find a replacement, at such short notice, you're 3 weeks out from the fight. John Jones, you don't know when John Jones is getting out of prison. Is John Jones going to be able to prepare himself on a short-term notice? I know he's been preparing himself already, doing the whole media, the media run and everything like that. But, you still have to go through, legal process and so on and so forth. How are you going to, go into the fight with the right mindset, knowing that you have, courts and, lawyer stuff to do when you're also preparing for a fight? This is going to be one of the most hardest times for John Jones to really, set his mind straight. So I honestly think that the best thing for him to do is to pull out of the fight, get your stuff ready, come back. Pray to God that the UFC doesn't suspend you for what has happened. And hopefully you're able to rebound and, get back into another positive, direction in your life. John Jones seems to be, at one point, last week, seemed to be back on, the much more of a more positive phase. I'm not really a big fan of his whole eye poke kind of videos or his little, childish videos that he's posted in the past. That really irritates me. But regardless of the fact, it's you're a professional athlete. You got to do what you got to do and to save your image as well. So I think the best thing for him to do right now is to pull out of the fight at UFC 197 against Daniel Cormier and, look for a fight in the near future. Bader could be a guy that the UFC could be calling, but we've already seen Johnson, we've already seen the Gustafsson fight. Bring in someone new, bring in someone that Cormier has not fought yet. I know Cormier and Ryan Bader had beef at one point or another right after Cormier won the title, so there is a lot of unsettled beef between the two. So why not settle the beef at UFC 197 between Bader and Cormier? So let me hear you guys' opinion about this. This is the Sports Nexus. I am your host, Justin Kish. Make sure you guys keep on clicking that subscribe button and keep on checking back for more. My name is Justin Kish, and I'll catch you guys at our next video.